to Peru in July to see a wedding of a family friend. So just when it gets warm here, he's going to go where it's going to get cold. He's got a little backwards, if you ask me. But today he's going to talk to us on a more peaceful world.
Hello, Toastmasters. Nobody robbed a liquor store on the lower part of town. Nobody OD'd. Nobody burned a single building down. Nobody fired a shot in anger. Nobody had to die in vain. We sure could use a little good news today. That's an Anne Murray song from the 1970s, and I do have good news for you. I thought it really stuck out when I saw the story. There is good news. The world is more peaceful than ever. At least that's according to a story out of the Telegraph-Herald, the Dubuque Telegraph-Herald, so it couldn't be wrong, that I cut out back in October because it just is so upbeat. You just don't see stories like this very often. 40 million people died in World War II. We have nothing like that going on today. There's nothing like that going on in the world. I follow the news quite closely, and in terms of large world conflicts going on, let's say define it by 50,000 people dead or more, I don't know that I could name one. In Afghanistan, there certainly is fighting going on. I don't know that the casualties have reached that number. If you go to Africa, I know that Congo has had its conflicts over time, but I see this morning on BBC that they just elected a new president, so I believe the fighting there has died down. We're surprisingly peaceful, and people don't hear that type of news because you don't turn on the TV to see that. People like to watch blood and gore. That's the way the world works. If you're a cameraman, what you're taught, I've heard, is to shoot high and shoot red. You go to a high point and you shoot red, you shoot blood. That's what makes it onto television. It really does. You can't just go by what pops up on the internet or on television, though. You need to sit down and you need to analyze things with spreadsheets and look at historical documents. There's a book out now. It's called The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. Harvard psychologist Steven Pinker is the author of it. And in it, he offers the premise that we're a smarter, more educated world, and we're becoming more peaceful in several statistically significant ways. That's great news. What better news could you have? And that's why I contacted Alex and I said, hey, put me down as a possible speaker for today. He said, oh, there's already 3, so I don't know, you're out of luck. But I'll put you down as a possibility. 2 people dropped. So here I am with good news for you at Christmas time. The people killed in battle, according to this book, has dropped 1,000-fold over the centuries. Wars used to be a lot more bloodier than they are now. And I couldn't help but reflecting on the North Korea leader that just died, Kim Jong-il, I believe I have his name correct. You don't have many countries like that anymore where you have somebody building up nationalism to extreme levels. It's just much harder to do in the world that we live in where there's so much communication going on. It's the tech toys. I think that's part of the reason. We're a lot smaller world than we used to be. You don't end up with throngs of people wailing uncontrollably at funerals very often like you see on TV the last day or so over in North Korea. You just don't have that sense of nationalism. Genocide deaths, they've dropped remarkably. They compare 1942 to 2008, so maybe that's a little bit unfair, and that 1942 would have been the heart of World War II. And right now, in terms of the world, in terms of real genocide going on, I'm aware of the Christian sector being driven out of Iraq. I'm aware of that going on. But in terms of other really genocides around the world, I couldn't name any others. Can anyone here name any other genocide-type events going on in the world right now? I can't.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
what?
Exactly. We'll talk later.
Oh. Okay. All right. There were less than 20 democracies in 1946. Now there's almost 100 in the world. Good news again. It's good news. It's uplifting. It just isn't the sort of news they get very often. IQs are increasing. This year's average kid would have been a near genius a century ago. Intelligence translates to a kinder, gentler world. What better news could you want? Murder within families has dropped too. I think back to grade school. Randy Schaefer was a schoolmate. If you fast forwarded down the road maybe 15 years or so, his then wife announced that she was leaving him for another guy. I knew Randy. Randy took out the deer rifle and shot and killed her and tried to kill himself. I think this took place on the county road in a rural area out in front of their house. Tried to kill himself unsuccessfully. I know he ended up with extreme injuries. Bad news. I know of another case, Carol Tranel from high school, a classmate. Her husband strangled her in front of the kids. And if you go around the room here, odds are that some of you know spouse killed spouse type situation. Raise your hand if you know of anybody where any cases. Okay, one. Okay, only one person in here does. Okay, I know of two. So it comes close to home.
I know.
You do too, Rosemary? Okay, two people do. And it's just bad news. That's improved too. It's dropped a lot just since 1976. And I wonder if it isn't the case of a higher divorce rate, maybe it's good news. It's easier to get out of marriages than it used to be, which people might say, well, that's bad news, but at least the spouse killing spouse ratio has dropped over the years. Very, very good news. Wives still kill husbands at the rate of 0.2 per 100,000 people. Husbands kill wives at the rate of 0.8 per 100,000 people. So husbands killing wives is 4 times more common than vice versa, which seems to make sense. Guys have more of a problem with violence than women do overall, I believe, and other people here probably believe the same thing too. Good news, a twinkle in our eyes, a twinkle for Christmas. It's a good thing. It's a great way to start the day. Nobody was assassinated in the whole third world today. And in the streets of Ireland, all the children had to do was play. And everybody loves everybody in the good old USA. We sure could use a little good news today. Anne Murray's song from the 1970s, it's good news as Christmas is approaching. It's uplifting. It's positive. That's the type of thoughts that we need going into the holiday season. Mr. Toastmaster.